Let's move on. Let's talk about the Florida Gators getting a lot of talk this offseason. Billy Napier getting a lot of headlines, a lot of press. Hot seat this, hot seat that. Um, where are we with this Florida team, CD? I mean,
Listen, I
besides the absolutely abysmal gauntlet, impossible uh maze of a schedule that this is that they have to navigate. What are
I
your thoughts on this Florida team?
I do think there is real bias happening because I think you think Florida is going to finish with this record. Their over on win total is 4.5. They can't be that good. And I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think you and I would both agree here that this team is more talented than every single other 4-5 team. Arkansas is also 4-5 in the SEC. That just shows you how schedules are not built equal, even within the SEC, right? And we'll get to that gauntlet of the schedule. We've already talked about it before in a previous video. It is brutal. It is absolutely brutal. But I do think that Napier, they've actually done a good job talent wise. And I think that coaching staff is not terrible. I don't mind Rob Sale. I kind of like Austin Armstrong as well. You've got depth at positions. I think you had some attrition as well, but I still think that there's plenty of talent in this team. And I can't wait to get into it.
Well, let's start at the quarterback position, right? Graham Mertz, who we were absolutely pooping on this time of year last
Yeah.
year,
Yeah.
and he way exceeded our expectations, right? I
Yeah.
mean, he was fantastic last year. I thought he was really good. Now you had Ricky Pearsall, who was a first round draft pick. Who what show called that? That would be this show.
Yep.
Um, that's besides the point. He was really effective last year, right? And you get Eugene Wilson back, and you get Elijah Badger from Arizona State. I I think Graham Mertz can be really good. And aside from that, like DJ Lagway is a fantastic athlete at quarterback there from Willis, Texas. He he's special. And people are talking about like, oh, when is he going to play? I don't know if he's going to need to play this year because Graham Mertz played at a very acceptable level last year. Like he took care of the football, which surprised by. He was effective pushing the ball down the field. He put the ball in good spots. He was not helped out by his offensive line at all. He's also not. He had talented receivers, but uh, there were some key drops in some games. But I do think the passing offense was pretty good last year. I think it was pretty good. I think the run game is where they really struggled. In that offensive line. Uh, I think they were
Yeah, that
fine and they were okay in the red zone. It was just about getting to the red zone, is really what it was for them.
yeah, to me, like you said, Mertz, there's nothing wrong with him at all. If you go all 12 games with him as your starting quarterback, I think Florida can absolutely go to a bowl game. But DJ Lagway, I mean, there's going to be cry from the fan base, especially if you're losing games, even if you're losing games to teams like, at Tennessee, Georgia, Texas, right? Teams that are just really, really good. It doesn't matter. I mean, we know Florida. I mean, they're going to be hungry, and they should be. And Lagway is a special talent that's going to be hard to keep off the field. I wonder how much you can get him involved while keeping Mertz as the primary quarterback, whether it's, RPO, whether it's read option, whether it's QB run, two quarterback play, whatever. I mean, you can have fun with it, and I hope they do. But I still think, I mean, you can also hand the ball off, turn around and hand the ball off to a guy like Montrell Johnson, right? Even though you lose Trevor Etienne, right, who was a tremendous running back for you for a couple years, Johnson's really, really good. He's been consistent for multiple years in the SEC. He's going to get the bulk of the carries, and I think he can surpass 1,000 yards. Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree as well. I mean, he had 800 yards last year. Um,
He was a leading rusher. He was a leading rusher last year.
yeah, and people talk. There were so many people at SEC media days that were like, "Oh, the loss of Trevor Etienne, the loss of Trevor Etienne, the loss of Trevor Etienne." Like, guys, Montrell Johnson's pretty good. Like, he's a
Hmm.
solid running back. I don't think Trevor Etienne is. It's a big loss, right? He was a really effective player for them, but I'm on the side. I am less concerned about that loss than I am about the loss of like say Ricky Pearsall.
Yeah,
I'm less
I do.
concerned. I'm less concerned about the loss of Trevor Etienne than I am about Ricky Pearsall.
I mean, I guess moving to the wide receiver room, I mean, insert one, or I guess exit one Arizona State transfer, insert another one, right? So obviously, Elijah Bazzer comes over from Arizona State. He was a highlight of that spring portal window. He had over 700 yards last year, 3 touchdowns in a really, really wacky Arizona State season, right? With quarterback turnover, a lot of injuries. Obviously, year one with Kenny Dillingham, who we are still high on, by the way, but it was a tough year last year. Badger gets out and he ends up at Florida. I think him and Mertz can have some really nice connections. It's a big body target for him. Obviously, a veteran. The guy that's in his, you know, graduate degrees right now, which is awesome. And he fits really nicely alongside Eugene Wilson. Eugene Wilson, you mentioned, was pretty good last year. I mean, as a true freshman, like you saw him make mistakes and maturity issues, well, whatever. He was a freshman, right? Like I'm gonna give him the benefit of the doubt. I think he can have a really good year this year. I think he will get even better, even more consistent. But he is your big play. He is your, not alpha, but he's like your, I don't know, separator. I don't know. He is your high potential. He's your high potential wide receiver in this room. And then also another veteran, Chimere Dike, who's got chemistry with Mertz. He had 300 yards last year for Wisconsin. Again, a weird offense as well. I think if you bring him over, similar to what we talked about with coaches bringing over players, if your quarterback tells you, "Hey, I want this guy's a good fit for us," I absolutely, to me that tells me positive things about DK as a person, but also as a football player and that chemistry that he has with Graham Mertz.
I'm glad you know how to pronounce that name.
Chimere DK, I just absolutely just free balled in. But
Oh, well, I never mind. It's
I
all
mean,
good.
I've heard it. I've heard it on plenty of times. Being in the Big Ten, right? I've heard it plenty of times. For Wisconsin playing, but beyond those guys, I don't see a lot of depth, especially depth with proven
No,
production.
no.
Um, I, it's
Are one of those freshmen going to step up? I mean, last year was Eugene Wilson, right?
I guess so.
Like, is it Tank Hawkins? Is it TJ Abrams? Like, one of those guys potentially step up? I don't know. I don't know. But you're right. I think the depth in the wide receiver room is concerned. Like, if Eugene Wilson goes down, I am all of a sudden very concerned about the talent on this in this receiver group.
Yes.
And I'm sure there'll be beat writers that would be willing to disagree with me for sure. But the big three here is really solid, though. Really solid. So I think Graham Mertz can do a lot with that. Let's move on over to the offensive line then. And dare I say, this offensive line on the interior is good.
Are you assuming Damian George gets moved to the
Yes.
interior?
Yes, I
Okay,
am
yes.
assuming that.
So he is one of the worst Power Five tackles in college football, but
Correct.
he can be
Forget
a
it, though.
solid guard. But by the
Forget
way,
about
he is a guy. I mean, not to slam the kid anymore. Like he's played a lot of football. So that means like whether it was by necessity, and I think last year potentially was, but even at Alabama, he got a lot of snaps there. And I mean he played inside, he played outside there.
talents there.
I the talent's there, and I just think at guard, I think he will be much, much better at guard. You won't have to put him on an island and just figure it out. And I don't know. To me, I'm looking at this O line. They're gonna upgrade. How much is it gonna be by?
Yeah. I think Jake Slaughter at center is really good. I think Harris at guard. Uh, I know he didn't play in every game last year, but I thought he was good. I thought he was good at
Yep,
guard. I think the
there.
interior there is fine. I think it's fine. And that's why I think Montreal Johnson, that's why I think this run game could be really good. The tackles, though, I have questions. Lots of questions. I think
So
Austin Barber's okay. He's got experience. That's important.
I like him. I mean, he looked better. I just think poor George got picked on
Ah,
last year.
yeah,
So
I don't know. I mean, Barber, we'll see. Here's the thing. When we talk about offensive line, we've mentioned this before, like we anticipate improvement from players, right? I would anticipate improvement from Austin Barber. Is Cameron Waits going to be a dude at that other tackle spot? I don't
I
know.
mean, he came in and started the last two games of last year. So I guess that staff was looking ahead to the future. I guess 2024 is like, hey, this guy, we're gonna need him to play right tackle potentially. But even beyond that, I think bringing in a guy like Brandon Crenshaw Dixon from San Diego State. I think
Yeah,
it's really nice depth. I don't think I love that you don't rely on him to come
to
in and play
start.
tackle for you because I mean you saw that with Ohio State, Josh Simmons last year, right? They brought in similar guy. And now obviously scout the player, not the helmet, right? Both guys are from San Diego State, but the reality is like there's a step up in competition from Mountain West to the SEC. And I just love that you don't have to rely on him to be a tackle. He can more be swing depth if one of your guys goes down.
Agreed.
If it's more about just throwing more darts at a dartboard or paper at a wall, whatever it may be, whatever you want, and see what sticks.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm looking at uh Crenshaw Dickinson's pressure rates, I'm just calculating it right now. Only 3% pressure rate over there at tackle, which is actually pretty exceptional. So, um, yeah, I agree with you. That is 100% an appropriate take. You love to see that that guy doesn't have to come in and immediately play in the SEC. If anything, he'll
And
get acclimated, right? And, if down the stretch, right, someone gets hurt, like you said, he can play guard, he can play tackle, whatever you need him to do, uh, he can potentially fill in that role. So
that's six
I'm of the
alignment.
opinion that
Yeah.
this offensive line could be fine. Again, I don't feel great about a lot of the depth in the interior after those three guys that we talked about in the interior. But if you're just looking on paper, like you said, those top six, uh, don't want to throw in Devon Manuel in there as a
I was about
seventh.
to mention him. I was gonna say, I mean, he's a big dude, 6'7", 6'8", 320. He's got starting production, starting experience in the SEC at Arkansas a year ago. He was a left tackle, which is nice to back up a guy like Barber to have experience that has protected your blind side in case something happens to him.
His backup,
But yeah, I was
which is
gonna,
fine.
yeah, exactly. And I was gonna say like your sixth and seventh offensive lineman are important positions. Like those are positions that you need to feel comfortable with. And I do more this year than I did last year because last year I didn't like your tackles, like your starting tackles. This year I don't hate your backup tackles. And I think that's definitely a step in the right direction.
I agree. Let's talk about this defense. Um, it wasn't great last year. Not gonna lie, wasn't great. Uh, but can we see? Is there a chance that this defense can improve?
Yeah, I think so. I look in that secondary, which I guess we'll talk to. I think it can be better than last year, even though you lose a couple of your starters. But I guess we'll start with our D line like we always do. Um, Tyreek Sapp, how much more disruptive can he be? I don't think I like his potential there. I think, you saw some flashes last year consistently. That's going to be the problem is putting it together. And you got to replace a guy like Princely You, who, at 600 snaps last year was unbelievable rushing the passer, who's for a team we'll get to an Ole
Agreed.
Miss. So that's obviously, going to be a tough loss, but Sapp, I don't think can fill a void at that rate rushing the passer, but I still think he's a pretty good guy to just plug in there. I look at a guy like Cameron James. He's a guy, um, that played a good amount last year, more so on special teams. I think they've kind of done some good things with him. We'll see how he works, but even, Boone, Cersei, Collins, you've got guys that are edges, I guess, to replace him. I think it's more like you're gonna replace him in the aggregate, not necessarily with one player. But that's kind of how I see it. What about you?
I mean, defensively, you get some pieces back that you really like. Jordan Castell in the defensive back room, who was as a true freshman, um, led the team, I believe, in total tackles at safety spot. I mean, defensive line, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I feel very similarly about a lot of these guys as you do. In the linebacker core, is Grayson Howard, do you think he's going to start?
Potentially, I don't hate that there. I mean,
coming over from South Carolina.
yeah, I mean, it's not
I don't
not
know.
terribly. It's a
You
nice
lose.
recruit.
Here's the thing: you lose Scooby Williams. I don't think Scooby Williams was that good. I think they used him wrong. I think anyone. It's hard to use Scooby because I think he was such a big athlete, so fast, so physical, so talented. Like I almost would rather have him just be a uh, stand up edge rusher almost. Don't make him think too much. 'Cause he really just did not look that good on film. Right. If Grayson Howard, I know he doesn't have as much experience as Scooby Williams per se, but maybe a guy like him can benefit from good coaching. I know they lost some of their defensive staff um in Jay Bateman's move and Elijah Spencer's move. I think I think this linebacking core, I think you could I think it might surprise us this year. I think it might
Well, I
surprise
mean,
us.
Shamar James is just really, really good. I
Yes.
think. I mean, he is really good. Yeah, like you said, it's going to be about who's next to him. Kristen Howard, I guess Derek Wingo potentially. He gave you 200 plus snaps last year. Didn't play great in those snaps, but I guess it's there. Even RJ Moten can come down in the box as well. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's Shamar James is probably gonna have to cover a couple of different, vulnerabilities potentially in that linebacker room.
But I think it's gonna surprise us. I
Yeah.
think our number two, whoever it is, I think is gonna surprise us. Not gonna lie. I think whoever it is has a chance to be better than Scooby. So
Well, yeah, and you're also the benefit. To me, I like their defensive interior line much better than their edges. Cam Jackson from Memphis a couple years ago, he struggled last year, but I think he's having a much better spring. Ackerman and SEC, Caleb Banks, the coaching staff really, really likes him. Obviously, everyone knows who Desmond Watson is. If you don't, you've seen him a picture of him. He is a massive, massive player. He is all of 460 plus pounds, 6'5", wearing number like 21, which is awesome for a defensive lineman. And then obviously, Joey Slackman, but obviously the cream of the crop, right, coming in defensively is LJ McCray, that 5-star. And I guess he doesn't even have to play, right? It's kind of crazy that you're bringing in these two crazy 5-stars in Lagway and McCray, and they're both kind of in crowded rooms, which I guess is a good thing. I guess that's what it should be at Florida, right? In year 3 of Billy Napier. But I wonder how much production that he gives them. I think he's a guy I'm more excited for in 25 and beyond. But if he can give you good production, that's just gravy, right? That's just gravy.
I want to talk about the secondary. I think the talent's there
Yep.
to be really good. And like I said, Jordan Castell, I think, is the leading the charge there. Just a true sophomore a year ago. 60 tackles, 5 tackles for loss, interception, 3 pass defenses. Um, I think he's really good.
I mean,
I think he's
to
really
trust a
good.
true sophomore with 600 to be your leading snap getter, right? To
A true
trust him is
freshman.
pretty impressive. I'm sorry, yeah, true freshman. Yeah, that is. I mean, Caleb Downs got a ton of help. I'm sorry, wow, Caleb Downs got a ton of hype, right? Because obviously he was incredible. Not take anything away from him, but Castell is also a guy in the SEC that was doing a lot of good things.
Yeah, I think Jason Marshall is a pretty solid cornerback. One option there. Um, well, let's see. How do you like these transfers, right? You got DJ Douglas, you got Bridges, you got Turner, and then of course, kind of highlighted by Cormani McLean.
I think there's been some report. There has been reports of McLean real quick, and those reports have not been positive. I'm not going to speculate on anything because I think it is more rumors, but I'm not quite counting on him to give anything, especially this
Yeah,
year. But Turner and Douglas in that safety room or nickel, whatever you want to do with those guys, I like them. And Turner's from Washington, Douglas from
Power Five
Tulane.
experience.
Yeah, of both guys that are veteran. Turner, to me, what I love about this room here is, I mean, Turner is 6'3", 212, right? You go to the cornerback room. Jason Marshall is 6 plus, 6 foot plus, 6'1", 205, 5-star athlete, right? Devin Moore, 6'3", 200 pounds. I mean, I love the length and athleticism in this room, even though not of a ton of returning like good players in production last year because even you got beat deep a bunch last year. But I do, like you said, the potential athleticism in this room in terms of projecting to next year in 2024, I kind of like it. I feel pretty darn good about betting on these guys.
I do too. I do too. Can they put it together? We'll see. I think they can. I think they can. And that I think is going to be the part of the secondary that I think the linebackers surprise. I think the defensive line is all right. I think the secondary is pretty dang talented. And if they kind of put that together, man, on the defensive side of the ball, I think this team is going to give people problems. And their over win totals at 4.5. You mentioned that. And we'll go through the schedule and just reinforce how brutal this is because I know people have been hearing this all offseason. But you get Miami week 1 at home, Sanford at home, Texas A&M at home, Mississippi State on the road. And then you have a bye and then UCF at home. Those first 5 games are going to tell you everything that you need to know about this season, right?
Yeah.
Those 5 games are so important for Billy Napier and that staff. And then you get
Well, let
Tennessee
me
on the
ask you
road.
this real quick. I guess what's the record, right? While we're on those 5 games, what's the record that they have to be where you want to be, right? Like realistically, where you feel like, okay, Billy Napier can keep his job with at least this. Is it 3-2?
They have to be 3-2. At
Which is
least.
crazy. Think
At
about what you're
least.
saying right there. Let's appreciate it is Miami with as talented a roster as they have had in a while. It is Texas A&M revamped with a really good coaching staff. It is at Mississippi State in a tough place to play in a really tough offense. And then UCF, the most talented team they've had, in my opinion, even more talented than the national champs, back however many years ago that was. I mean, right? Can we just appreciate like that is it's pretty crazy.
That is the easy part of their schedule. Which is crazy. Okay, so let me go to Tennessee, right? Kentucky at home. And they've had problems with Kentucky last couple of years. By Georgia at home, Texas on the road, LSU at home, Ole Miss at home, Florida State on the road. What a brutal November. That's 0-5 right there. That's 0-5 in November. Did I just look at that? I'm like, man, that's nuts.
Well, Kentucky at home. I guess you said I know Kentucky's played really well against Florida
No, but
of
that's
late.
October. I'm talking about November.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, November. Oh, yeah. Holy cow! And there's no bye
Georgia,
week.
Texas, LSU, Ole Miss, Florida State. That's 0-5. When I look at that, now is that guaranteed to be the case? No, right? I think LSU, getting them at home with their talented secondary, I think they could give LSU problems, right? But like the over under win totals at 4.5. I understand why it's at 4.5, but I have to take the over on this, right? And of course, this isn't gambling advice, right? We're not actually betting on these. We pick these over unders for every single team. I have to take the over here, 4.5, right? Sanford, obviously, that's your only guaranteed win on the schedule, which is crazy. I like them at Mississippi State. They should beat UCF. They are more talented than UCF, but man, could UCF definitely win that game. I think Kentucky at home, they can win that game. I think LSU at home, they can win that game. I think Miami, they can win. I actually have them beating A&M week 3 because I think that's going to be either you're coming off a win against Miami and you are riding that momentum into that game, or Miami beats them, and then all of a sudden they're backed in the corner, wounded animal mode, and they got to go play Texas A&M, and they get them at home, which A&M has not won a road game since 2021. So let that be known. So I'm just saying, I think Florida definitely has a chance to win that game. So I'm taking the over 4.5, and I believe you are as well.
Yeah, this team is way too talented not to win 5 games. And I know I'm probably just putting my foot. I'm just gonna have to put my foot in my mouth eventually. Like, because to be honest, if they don't hit this over by November, it's gonna be a sweat, and
It's
it's
over.
gonna be a real sweat. But the reality is real quick. You're talking about Sanford. That is Nick Scalzo, Sanford. Okay, former QB1, Behind the Lights star. Check out my short I did on all those. Those are fun to make about where are they now. But yeah, like you said, the SEC did them no favors. To me, I'm asking, where's Vandy? Where's Arkansas? Even South Carolina, I like those teams. And Mississippi State's the only blessing, but you get them on the road, right? And jeez Louise, man.
Hey, welcome to not being in the SEC East every year.
Well, the problem is what athletic director schedules Florida State, Miami, and Central Florida? in one offseason. I get if so you play Florida State every year, which is awesome, and you should keep that. And if you want to schedule Miami and UCF in back-to-back years, or you know, two and then two, or whatever it may be, that's your prerogative, and that's awesome. And I encourage that, and I encourage out-of-conference big-time games. But this is just unfair for Billy Napier, right? And
Yeah.
he could go 5-7, and he could probably get fired. And I think he would do a tremendous job with this year's team. Now, I
Yeah.
will say,
Also, correction real quick. Georgia game's not at home. That's a neutral site
it's
game.
neutral site, correct? Yes, that's obviously the largest cocktail party, or right? But
World's largest outdoor cocktail party.
thank you. So the only thing I do worry about though is we've talked about the talent on this team is there was a lot of penalties. I mean, Florida had a good amount of penalties last year, and close game. I mean, it was not what I would thought I would expect of Billy Napier. There were some things that happened in year one that were like, okay, whatever, it's just learning a new system, implementing blah blah. But those were repeated mistakes that were bad coaching, whatever it may be, just indicative of bad coaching, I guess. Undisciplined actions and whatnot. So we'll see what happens this year. This is a team I'm following closely because that schedule is crazy, and every week they're going to be after week 3, they're going to be playing some kind of game with a lot of storyline on it, and it'll be fun.